Hey, what is up guys, it's Cybert here. I'm gonna be making a long comprehensive guide for Aurelion Sol. So first we're gonna be covering all the abilities and combos, so you can play your team fights correctly and burst down enemies quicker. First of all, coming off the top of my head would be the basics of the abilities are you press your W and you obviously deal damage. You use your Q, the further it expands, the longer it stuns, and you can use your ult to push people away within this reach, so you can stand here and they'll still be knocked up. Aside from that, that's pretty much all the basic combos, except for the EQ, you already know it. It's gonna keep going. Yeah, so a good combo could be when you Q and then you ult. So you Q like this, and then boom. So you push them into the extended stun duration of your Q. So another one of the combos would be with the Everfrost and ult. So you stunlock them for quite a while. Like this, and then that, and then this. It's a very simple combo. Most of his combos are. Next on the list would probably be the Insect. Let's say he's right there. You've been fighting a bit and he's just used his dash. You can do like this. You just when I point your ult here and flash behind him. It's very easy once you get the hang of things. And also something I would like to note is that your ulti, its hitbox is kinda fat, so even if you're standing right here, you're gonna push him still. You don't always have to be behind them if you're like inside or next to them. Moving on, there's the basic roaming combo. You can obviously use your EQ like this, but most of the time you actually don't want to do this because you can't be certain where the enemies are gonna end up unless you are good at predicting it, which I can be sometimes. And so you can instead of just going EQ instantly like this, you can not use your Q, and then instead you can hold it so that once you're here you can use your Q. This also allows you to do the let's say you just eat in behind them, and there's two bot laners here. You can do the, you sneak behind them, and then you do this combo, because then you ult them back to your team, and then you stun them for longer. Aside from this, there's really not any particularly important combos for learning Asol. The main other thing I need to cover for Asol is spacing. You really need to get good at spacing. That's holding your distance from the enemy the perfect amount so that you don't get hit while still being able to dish out damage and keep up your DPS in fights. This is a lot about game knowledge and just experience, so it's gonna take a while, but once you know what, like let's say this was an Elise and this was an Aatrox. He's gonna throw his W at me or jump on me with EQ. He's gonna probably throw his cocoon at me, so when I'm fighting them, I'm obviously going to like keep my character away and then recognize when it looks like she's about to cocoon, so I'm just gonna dodge it, or I can fake dodge, And sometimes people hold it because they know you're gonna fake dodge, so it becomes this reverse psychology thing where you're gonna just he wants to cocoon you, right? And he sees you walking up here. Maybe it's a bait, so you go down, and then you go up again because you recognize that he's not that dumb. That's something I've been experiencing more in higher elos than lower elos, where in low elo, if you just do this and then this, that's enough to dodge most things. That's from my experience, that I have a tragic past of smurfing a lot, so that's something to keep in mind. So for team fighting, what you want to do is just recognize what you're up against. Let's pretend that these are melees and this is the range champion, like the ADC or something. You can easily, and I mean with practice obviously, you can easily space yourself from the melees. They're not gonna get onto you unless they have some dash ability or something that you cannot avoid. But you really just gotta recognize when they're up. So let's say you have a teammate right here, and he just engaged to fight, and they use the dash to get away. They won't have a dash on. The dash will be on cooldown, so you can just mess with them, deal damage. It's very simple. And also you want to hold your R unless you're certain it's gonna either kill, save you, or save your teammates. Because you don't want to just ulti, unless you're using it for an engage. Because you can, let's say the ADC right there is in the backline and spacing decently. You can stand like so far away, and then you can just ulti, and then your assassin can just run in and try and catch him. One of the plays you can do with your ulti in a team fight. Or you can, you know, as I said, you can hold it. So let's say this guy's jumping on me. Oh shit, we're gonna, you know, ult him. Even then, if he jumps on you, you can, instead of ulting him away, you can actually, you know, since you're inside of him and the hitbox is thick as fuck, you can do this. You can push him back into your team. That can often, you know, be useful. Unless you're pushing him into the backline at the ADC, it's likely an Aurelion or something, and then you just get shit on. It depends. But yeah, you want to hold your ulti unless you have a good reason for it. You don't want to just use it to dish out damage. You want to use the utility part to get the most out of it. You don't really deal... It's only a 70% scaling with a low base damage, so... Yeah, you want to keep it for that. If you're engaging a team fight with EQ, you need to recognize where would they be. Like, is Drake about to spawn? You might want to EQ right here so your team can push through. Or you can EQ directly on top if you know it's sort of safe. Like maybe you have Sonya's, you can do like this. You just, yeah, you EQ here. And, okay, that was way too early. But you get the point. I'll just refresh the ability and then we can keep it going like this. Yeah, so you're here. You just stun everyone, you W, and then you Sonya's. Because that's... Then your team can catch up with you here. If you're not doing it here. If you EQ right here, a lot of the times, you know, if we don't have a control over Dragon Pit or vision control at all, you can oftentimes camp the bush for enemies to come. So if you EQ a fat ass Q here that they can't avoid, you can get one pick or something for the guy zoning people off. Even here, like, I'm gonna EQ, I'll go like this, right? It's gonna be a lot bigger if it's from spawn, and then you would have been able to stun this or this. So keep that in mind when you're using EQ for objectives. That's the same for Baron. Especially with Baron, if you know, it's gonna take a while for them to take it down. So if you EQ, it's likely going to, you know, it's gonna hit if they're in the pit. That kind of rhymed, that's kind of funny. Anyhow, yeah, you see that this is unavoidable. And you already know this probably, if you've played Asol before, it's one of the satisfying things to do. Now, you can oftentimes, if you're ahead, you can steal the Baron, or you can, you know, just kill them all, pretty much, because they're gonna be half HP after winning a fight, and you respawn first, and then there's 3 people on Baron, and you EQ, and you just get, like, a bunch of damage out. Or either you stop the Baron, or you actually get some kills. Now, Asol's weakness in team fighting is ranged champions. Like, you need to either face really well against low ranged ADCs, like a Lucian Kai'Sa type of thing, where they, you know, you can barely outrange them with your stars. You see, if we have a 550 attack range, our stars go right outside of it, so it's about a 600 unit attack range with your stars. 550 is what some ADCs, short-range ADCs have, like Kai'Sa and Lucian. I don't remember if there are any others. I think Sivir, maybe. There you just want to make sure you're really on the edge, because otherwise they can auto-attack you. Also want to keep in mind, like, for example, ranged champions don't have to be ADCs. It can also be a Graves or a Akshan or Quinn or all those disgusting picks. What do you want to do against them? It's pretty much you just need to get on top of them. Like, if they're going on you, since they're not long-range ADCs or something, they'll be forced to like walk a little bit close to you. So that means you can obviously use your Q to either, let's say someone is ranged and they're hunting you, you can always disengage with Q like this, and you can always engage with the Q like this too. Since it grows bigger and they're, you know, they're running at you, they don't really have a choice. Quinn, on the other hand, she can dodge your Q with her E. It's kind of annoying because you can't reactivate your Q during a stun. For Akshan, it's really just about spacing your walls. You don't want to, like, he can do the rope here and then he can, you know, easily dodge your Q if he just reacts. Like, if he tries to Q on E on you here, you want to Q here because then he either dodges it or gets stunned. Like, he either goes away, doesn't deal damage to you, or he gets stunned. If he's just auto attack trading with you, you're going to lose unless you do some really nifty spacing where he tries to attack you and then you run away, and then the exact moment he tries to run away, you turn around, so you bait him to go back in, and then it's like a whole thing where who's better, pretty much who's better at spacing and AA. Now I'm gonna show you when you can roam. So roaming in League of Legends is actually a lot less complicated than it seems. If you want to push and roam to bot lane to kill their bot lane, what you have to do is shove the wave first, and then you can roam. If you shove the wave, it's going to, obviously, you've taken the entire enemy wave, so you're not losing gold and XP. And if you roam, you have a roam timer now, because I shove this in, right? Now there's no wave mid, so that means until the next wave arrives, there's nothing for me here that I can lose. So now I can EQ to bot lane and set up with my team a way to, you know, get some kills. Another thing you can do is, after you shove, obviously, you don't have to roam all the time. You can just leave the lane, because then not only are you pressuring the entire map, they have no clue where you are, unless you're on a ward, obviously, but you get to, you know, get some vision control of the map, get prio, you can help your jungler with scuttle crab. It's very important to help your jungler in any elo. It's like one of the key things to climbing, because you have to work with your team, right? It's not a solo game, especially as Aurelion Sol. His entire power budget is in his E, so you have to utilize that, right? You have to do stuff for your team. His Aurelion Sol's early game is really deceptively strong. Like, you have Electrocute proc, and then you can just poke them down, or you versus a melee that you can space very well against and win. That's why I played Toplane Asol. All of these tips sort of count for Toplane Asol too. The main difference is that you can't really roam bot lane as easily unless you instantly, if you kill them, you crash the wave, and you get tempo enough on the next wave. Now I have an insane amount of time after I back here. Let me just back, right? Then I can go to bot lane, EQ bot lane, whatever. And then the wave is still, you know, it's probably gonna be there, and you're gonna lose maybe one wave, but at least you're having a chance to impact the bot lane. That's the same with sidelaning, right? In the mid to late game, you're gonna be sidelaning, while the ADC is gonna be mid lane. Because once bot lane takes the tier 1, most of the time they want to rotate mid lane. And you want to rotate mid lane because you're closer to all the objectives, right? The reason they have to stay bot for tier 1 first is that it's the easiest turret to take down. It doesn't have resistances in the early game. So you can get all the platings, and then they can pressure all the other lanes for their platings, which is one of the key parts of, you know, having two people in a lane. Forcing the enemy bot to rotate too without taking your tier 1 and such. Once you're side laning, what you want to do is just roam. Shove roam, usually. Unless you have the chance to push. Like, let's say they're fighting in the mid lane and it looks already lost. Just keep pushing. You're playing more for yourself, because you... Like, this tier 2 right here is gonna give me a solid amount of gold, and I have the alacrity for the attack speed. That's something I like to do with Presence of Mind. Those are my mid lane runes. Like, I got 500 gold from that turret, right? It's a lot of gold, a lot of elite that you build on yourself, even if your team might be throwing a fight. Unless there's a certainty in a play your team does, you should not go for it. Because if you put yourself behind, that's when you stop being able to carry, when you stop being able to be the one to impact the game. So always put yourself first, and then put your team. That's the main concern for you for most of the game. I think that is all I can tell you about Aurelion Sol's combos and abilities and team fighting and spacing. Now, builds. We'll look at runes after, but builds. So, early game, most people start corrupting pot. I think that's fine. That's what I do. It's a solid option. It gives you more damage. It gives you more sustain. It's very nice with... Some people like Warp Tonic. I used to a lot after the before the nerfs, but since it's been changed, I started running this instead, which also gives me more mana. But it's still a very viable option for the health and damage you get in the early game. Okay, so some people argue that on your first back you want to go for this. Like you already have Corrupting Pot and then you want to go for this. It's fine and it helps you snowball, but it also can set, if you don't utilize your Dark Seal and get any further lead, it's gonna be a waste because you have to sell these for 40% of the price once you sell them. If you sell them, obviously. You're gonna be selling the Dawn String most likely. It's gonna fill up your inventory. What I like to do on my first back is go for Sorcerer Shoes because you get the movement speed for the kiting. Like, you know, you can kite a lot better and get a lot more hits in without, you know, taking as much damage. You can roam a lot easier to the side lanes. You can avoid ganks easier and you get some more damage. It's very nice in my opinion, and it also you don't need to sell these ever. This is your final hoots. In my second or my first back, depending on how much gold I happen to have, I want to go for Lost Chapter for the extra mana, and then after Lost Chapter, you can either finish your Rylai's or you can build into a Mythic. This is my personal build. I know some people they don't even bother with this kind of Mythic, or they don't bother with a Mythic at all. I know some people rush Rylai's, which I don't think is bad at all. You can do that if you want. I just like to have the extra mana from the Lost Chapter. So my build would go like this, and then I'd build into either a Ludens, an Everfrost, a Crown, or a Liandry's. These are all for great options for Sol, depending on the situation. You want to go Crown when you're against things you cannot avoid. Rengar ult, you cannot possibly avoid it unless you ulti in the right direction instantly or you Sonya's it. I really like to go it if I'm concerned, like if the Rengar is very ahead, I go for this. I also go for this against Karthus, because Karthus ult is very spammable. For some reason, it's very OP right now. And then he makes money off his first strike, and yeah, he just keeps spamming it, right? So having Crown allows you to survive that without getting low, and you don't have to waste your Sonyas. Instead of Crown, you can go for Everfrost. Everfrost helps a lot. It's a very good thing against maybe you're playing versus Katarina or things that want to run you down and you need to lock them down in a fight. It also helps with the combos. As you saw earlier, you can combo with it, like you can do a Vic Q and then you can, you know, continue the stun and then you ulti and then, yeah. They're either dead or they've been very low and they haven't been able to move at all. Instead of Everfrost, you can go for the Liandry's Torment, or Anguish it's called now. Liandry's Anguish is mostly against tanks, but I personally don't build it very often. I'd have to be against a lot of tanks, because for the most part you can utilize, you know, it doesn't give you health, it gives you ability haste, which isn't the most useful and so compared to the other stats that like movement speed, AP, and magic pen you can get. So in my opinion, you can just go for your whatever. Let's say I'm going Ludens, and then I can go Demonic secondary, or I can go Void Staff and completely annihilate them anyways. Demonic is a pretty decent option too. So Ludens, while it doesn't give you health, it gives you a lot of extra damage. Like with Ludens you can proc, and then you see the cooldown right there. It goes down like half a second every time you hit with your abilities, up to 3 seconds per cast. So let's say I get this, it's already halfway back, and then it's gonna be up in a second. Like your W will be up before, and then you can just recast it and it'll be up pretty quickly. And it helps you with movement speed, because once it procs you get a burst of 15% movement speed for 2 seconds. The extra echo damage is nice. It gives you magic pen per legendary, so you can burst down squishies, which is very nice with electrocute. You can then afterwards you can build Shadow Flame or Void Staff. I'd recommend Void Staff. Shadow Flame is a shit item for the most part. Yeah, it's a solid buy, but you're gonna be squishy, so it needs to be, if you're confident in your movement and spacing, and then you can use it, and then you can, I mean, you can space with it because of the movement speed, right? That's oftentimes what I do. Like, it's very good against a Yasuo or Yone where you need to dodge their ultis or Qs. That's about all the mythics that I personally use, but some people like Night Harvester. I don't personally see the appeal. It's okay. It's not bad at all. I mean, there's a reason Challenger Asols, they play with it, but I just think it lacks the mana, and it's flat damage, there's no penetration, and it just gives you ability haste. Which you can argue ability haste for E is good, but aside from that, I really think it's a risky item. Because you use 110 mana per W, and like I'm running Presence of Might, unfortunately, but it adds up pretty quickly. Like if I didn't have my refresh on mana, right? That was 2 Ws, that's 3 Ws. So 4 Ws, I've already used 3/4 of my entire mana bar with 4 Ws. That's a lot of mana, and you're not gonna regen it very quickly. So if you like it, you can go for it. Another option I've seen sometimes tossed around is the proto build. Let me find it here. Proto build is actually not bad. I've tried it before. It just, it actually has penetration, so that's really nice. Quite a bit of magic pin. The issue again is the lack of mana, but I honestly think this compared to Night Harvest actually has a very decent use. You can escape with it, and you can get in range like this, Helps you burst down people and catch up to people. It's a decent option. I haven't played it enough though to say that you should be buying it or not. Riftmaker, avoid it. It sounds fun on paper, but honestly, you're just gonna be dealing less damage overall because it's not horrible. It could work, but you don't utilize the Omnivamp very much, and because Omnivamp heals you 1/3, I believe, once it's AoE damage. Reduced to 33% effectiveness in area of effect damage, which is your entire kit. This is area of effect, this is area of effect, this is area of effect. There's no single target damage here. So you're gonna be healing very, very little from it. So I'd say it's not worth it, but it is fun sometimes to try. Sonya's and Rylai's, these two items are pretty core on him. You can avoid Sonya's in certain games and go for more damage, like Void or Rabadons, but I'd say for the most part you want to, use it to be useful in a team fight. You can just be a menace and just be annoying with your W. You can also reactivate your W inside of Sonya's, so you can take enemies out that are closer to you. Something that I've been trying a lot recently is Horizon Focus as like a 4th or 5th item, depending on whether or not I need Void or whatever. It's honestly, I don't think it's that bad. You get 10% increased damage. It seems okay in my opinion. You hit every single slow with your W stars procs it, so you're gonna be dealing a lot of bonus damage with it. But I haven't. I've tried testing the DPS differences. It's not huge or anything, but it's still. I don't think it's a bad option if you want to burst someone down. Like that was 2,000 damage right there in that little combo with the 10% increase. So that would have been 200 extra damage I just got out of everything. I'd say it's okay, especially in team fights. You're gonna be hitting everyone and getting 10% increase against everyone. I think it's a good option, but I'm still experimenting. Demonic, I've talked about this against tanks. It's solid, or tanky builds. It's also solid. Aside from this, there's not that many options. You don't want to build this. It's a shit item. You can build this. It's okay, but you usually lack more damage if you go for that route. Cosmic Drive is also okay. It's not horrible. It's not insane. It helps you kite better, so that's the good part. It gives you some good movement speed, and it isn't bad. You can interchange it or find your own experimental builds. Morella Nomicon, if your support isn't an enchanter running Chemtech Purifier, going Morello when they have a lot of healing, you can hit a lot of people, right? You can affect everyone in the fight with your anti-heal. So I don't think it's a bad option, but usually your support is going to be running Chemtech Purifier. Rabadons is, it's a good final item or 5th item, but it's also very, very expensive. So unless it's a big investment, that's all I'm saying. It's very rare I actually get to it because it's not that important when there's other items that grant you more utility and more movement speed, all those things that help you win in other ways than pure damage. So I think that's it for all the builds, aside from, you can try the tankier builds. It's fun, but it's nothing spectacular. Something like this, you're pretty tanky. You have a lot of health, you want to have different runes, obviously. You can go the pot, elixir, or sorcery usually. This is also fine, depending on what you're up against, but usually you want to go for the sorcery. And Farsight, alteration is better once you can get it, because you don't want to face check bushes. Okay. So for runes, this is a very important part of it all, right? The mid lane runes, this is my personal page, but I believe most people like this page, where you have biscuits and time warp tonic. I just don't like it after the nerfs, that's up to you. Palm gives you a lot of mana during fights, so that's why I use it, and the attack speed or tenacity can help. You can push faster with it and give in more auto attacks, so you can side lane and such with the extra push power. And tenacity is just good if you're, well, versus a lot of unavoidable CC or slows, whatever. Yeah, that's pretty much my page. You can interchange these two. I started using Relentless again for the better roaming. It's actually working out nicely. Here, I used to go Cheap Shot for extra damage, but Taste of Blood actually gives you a lot of health over time. So I would recommend going Taste of Blood for the lane safety, and it does give you sort of a replacement for the Warp Tonic. When you're playing top lane or against a lot of melees, you can go from my old room page with, for example, this, and secondary, for top lane you want the kiting. So I usually go for either this or that, and Nimbus Cloak. Because then you can utilize your summoner spells and outplay people with your good spacing. But you can also, for mid lane, since it's a short lane and you're safe for the most part, you can try these runes. It makes you tankier, it makes you pretty much good against the melee tank type comps, where you can go for this with maybe Ludens or Leandries and Demonic. And then another option, my old first strike page, can go a lot like this. You can go Warp Sonic. I've stopped using it. I like the Summoner spell haste. It's really nice. So yeah, this is pretty much my first strike page. It works for mid and top, but I usually use the top lane since there's a lot of more ranged matchups in the mid lane. So it's not as good, and it's less reliable. It's just very fun. You can always interchange these two, and aside from this, there's the Phase Rush rune page. It's an old one that, after the nerfs to Phase Rush, it's probably not that bad, to be honest, but I haven't played it in a long, long time. If I were to play it right now, I'd probably go for something like this. You get the mana here, you get the utility here, and extra damage and cooldown reduction. This would probably be my ideal rune page. Some people would go for this still. There's the Glacial. It's a rare one. I haven't seen it in a long, long time, but it's not that bad. I don't think it's that bad. You just lack the damage. That's the only issue with it. This would probably be my page if I were running it, or this, perhaps. Honestly, the last thing I can think of would be the Summonary. I've tried it. It's actually not that bad with Lutens or something like that. I'd obviously go for this. Some people would go for this if they were to go with this. But it's not that bad. You get some extra damage. You still get the Nimbus Cloak utility, and I think it's a doable page. And that's about it. I don't think there's anything more for me to tell you, aside from get in there and do your best and get better at Asol. Practice makes perfect, right? So you can't really expect to be a master tier player after watching this, but I believe you can get started on your journey with Asol as a champion and do your best to improve on him. I hope you enjoyed. This was a different video than usual and a lot of rambling and talking, but I've seen a lot of comments asking for me to do another guide on Asol, and here it is. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember to stay beautiful.